Chapter 5. Discovery. Published by Royal Road. Since Tekiel's arrival, no other player had descended into that specific temple. Apparently, the continent of Exodia was so unimaginably vast that tens of thousands of players had been scattered across a colossal area, encompassing various kingdoms, countries, and empires. The priests of the Northern Temple already knew of the arrival of the Champion of Light, but so far only their leader, Vrmmo Mage, had made contact with him. "Should we bring him food?" asked one of the priests in a room during the evening dinner. "He has been training arcane skills for several hours without stopping even to rest." "A level 1 being is really extremely durable," commented another of the priests at the table. In the courtyard, Tekiel was oblivious to the priests' conversations and the passage of time. Only a few hours had passed since he had entered the world of Exodus, but he had already made so many discoveries and suffered so many setbacks that ordinary players without much determination would have given up and run back to their mother's embrace. His expression, however, was not that of someone desperate. It was the expression of someone fascinated, completely immersed in what he was doing. Not even the warning to take a break for dinner and rest had been enough to stop him from continuing his insatiable search for the arcane mysteries before him. When priest Vrmmo Mage appeared at the door, offering that he join them for dinner, Tekiel politely refused, stating that he would remain in seclusion for an indefinite time. "I am close to discovering something of extreme importance to fulfill the mission given by the goddess Lumiel. I ask that I not be disturbed until I can complete this fundamental step of my research." Hearing the name of the goddess, priest Vrmmo Mage immediately complied. It was essential that the goddess's champion mastered the information in the book he had previously received. The goddess had left no other instruction besides leaving those books. "Understood, Mage Tekiel. All for the goddess." The priest did not seem bothered by Tekiel's refusal to participate in group meals. No other priest came to disturb him afterward. Tekiel did not care in the slightest if the NPC would be upset by his refusal. "I am close to discovering what is hammering in my mind, I cannot stop now." He felt he would go insane if he interrupted the process. After reaching his final conclusion about the skill arcane attraction, countless possibilities opened before him. Theories, combinations, hypotheses, and he wanted to test them all. Incredibly, all of this had begun with that strange skill. Arcane attraction should have been just a basic support skill, but in Tekiel's hands it became a well of knowledge from which he would only escape when he found what he sought, even if he had to dig with his hands until they bled. He doubted any other player was as advanced as he was at that moment. Most were probably running around killing creatures and testing new skills. Tekiel, however, was studying and dissecting the very mechanisms of the system. Yes, he dared to make such a statement to himself. He activated arcane attraction again. He had probably done this dozens of times in the last few hours. Even so, he was cautious enough not to overdo it and suffer another arcane energy overload. The terrible pain of that event still haunted his mind. Even reduced by the system to only a tenth of the real pain, it had been agonizing enough to leave a trauma. If it had been 100%, Tekiel did not doubt he could kill someone with the shock. In any case, he did not intend to mutilate himself or expose himself to torture again in the name of discovery. At least not at that moment. Since then, he had taken regular breaks to let the excess arcane energy dissipate, keeping a safe pace until he could cast Lesser Fireball or any other skill without exploding in the process. But unfortunately, he did not believe he could use Lesser Fireball in his current state. The nodes of arcane attraction were completely different from all other skills. While arcane attraction formed an elegant and organized vortex, the others looked like chaotic and disconnected tangles. His visualization technique for activating it would not work on anything else. In a way, he was back to square one. He would need to activate all other skills manually, node by node. No shortcuts. Even so, his prospects were not so bad. After accidentally discovering how to channel and infuse arcane energy with arcane attraction, Tekiel realized that the 3 points of intelligence amplified by the energy running through his brain were not just decorative numbers. His mental sharpness had increased several levels. He thought faster, reasoned better, and memorized everything with absurd clarity. And, to be honest, he really did feel 3 times smarter. That was impossible in any game. Intelligence, in RPGs, only increased magical damage or mana, not actual intelligence. How was that happening? His theory was that the system merely made everything seem 3 times easier. Because, if not that, then he really was 3 times smarter for real. But there was one doubt he could not shake off. Why could he see particles of arcane energy in the air through the arcane attraction skill? He had already uncovered the mechanism behind overload, channeling, and infusion, but the part about seeing energy made no sense at all. From what he understood, it should not make any difference whether the skill could attract the energy in its invisible state. He knew it was not just visual sensitivity. Something inside him was interacting with arcane energy in a way that did not feel normal. A subtle, perhaps even dangerous connection was forming, and he felt it every time he activated arcane attraction. I will go insane if I do not figure out what is happening. Tekiel muttered to himself as he continued creating theories and extrapolating data and hypotheses. Somehow, arcane attraction was activating something else that he could not discern. And this other function was allowing him to see the energy. What is allowing me to see arcane energy? That was the right question. Tekiel stood there in the middle of the courtyard, eyes closed, thinking about countless different possibilities, until he had an idea he had not tested yet. It seemed plausible and easy to execute. He kept arcane attraction activated, boosting his mental capacity, while simultaneously turning all his focus inward to his own body. It was at that moment that something in his mind finally clicked. That feeling of being close to discovering something amazing, only to remain eternally on the edge of it without reaching it, finally vanished. Tekiel opened his eyes wide, surprised. Arcane energy was stored inside his body. Through arcane sight, he could see the particles of arcane energy, but the moment he turned his focus to himself, he discovered the true mystery that had been gnawing at his mind. Tekiel could not only see the energy within himself as if he were a being of pure energy. But that was not the discovery. What truly surprised Tekiel was realizing that he could command that energy as if it were one of his limbs. In fact, that comparison was flawed. It was a completely new level of control. In short, Tekiel had absolute control over all energy within him. It was as if he were one with the arcane energy inside his body. Unfortunately, as soon as he tried to command it outward, it immediately lost cohesion after moving a few centimeters away from his body. Magnificent, magnificent, magnificent. Tekiel laughed like a madman. He did not limit himself to a few chuckles. For several minutes, he laughed non-stop as ideas flooded into his skull full of neurons turbocharged by arcane energy. It was not typical for Tekiel to act this way. Apparently, the arcane energy in his mind had the ability to expand not only his intelligence and reasoning but also his ambition. But there was something else running through his body, and it was not arcane energy. It was his true determination, finally finding a purpose to focus on. It seemed ridiculous to find meaning in life inside a game, in a simulated reality, but it was a fact. Tekiel knew with absolute certainty that he had found what he had been searching for a long time. For long minutes, Tekiel continued laughing like a mad scientist who had discovered unfathomable mysteries. His chest burned with the emotion of evolution. Perhaps he had always been a madman. Mage Genesis had merely given space for his madness to emerge. If someone could observe Tekiel clearly with arcane senses, they would see his eyes and body faintly glowing with bluish phosphorescent flames. That was pure arcane energy simply obeying its master. Tekiel looked sinister to behold. Is this man really one of the goddess's champions? Questioned one of the priests watching the courtyard where Tekiel trained. The priests became uneasy as they witnessed the bursts of laughter from the man who was supposed to embody the ideals of justice and righteousness of the goddess of light. Some felt their hair stand on end as they continued watching the apparently insane man murmuring to himself. Their conclusion was simple. This man is completely insane.